Tom Harrison rushed down the busy downtown sidewalk, his phone buzzing with angry texts from his boss about being late again. When a brown leather wallet lying abandoned near a bus stop caught his peripheral vision, for a split second, he almost kept walking. His mind focused only on the meeting he was missing, and the promotion that seemed to slip further away with each mistake. But something about the way the morning sun hit the worn leather made him pause. And that pause would change everything about the man he thought he was. Tom had been living on autopilot for the past 3 years. Ever since his own life had fallen apart in a series of selfish decisions that cost him everything he once held dear. His wife Sarah had left him after discovering his affair, taking their 8-year-old daughter Emma with her. And despite his promises to change, to be better, to fight for his family, he had instead chosen the easier path of numbing his guilt with work, alcohol, and a series of meaningless relationships that left him feeling more empty than ever. He worked as a mid-level accountant at a firm that barely tolerated his increasingly erratic behavior. Showing up late, missing deadlines, and displaying the kind of careless attitude that comes from someone who has stopped caring about consequences because he believes he deserves whatever punishment life hands him. His small apartment was a testament to his emotional state. Takeout containers scattered across surfaces, bills piling up unopened, and not a single photograph of Emma, because looking at her face reminded him of the father he had. Failed to Beatty last time he had spoken to his daughter was 6 months ago. A stilted phone conversation where she had asked him why he never visited anymore, why he had stopped coming to her soccer games, why it felt like he had disappeared from her life even though he was still alive. He had hung up that night, promising to do better, to be present, to rebuild the relationship that his selfishness had destroyed. But instead, he had used her pain as another excuse to retreat further into his self-imposed isolation that morning. Rushing to yet another job, he was on the verge of losing. Tom represented everything he despised about modern life. People too busy, too selfish, too wrapped up in their own problems to notice when someone else needed help. He had become the kind of person who would step over a wallet on the sidewalk, assuming someone else would deal with it, someone else would do the right thing. Because doing the right thing required an emotional investment he no longer believed he was capable of making, but something made him stop. Some flicker of the man he used to be before disappointment and self-loathing had carved away his better instincts. Tom picked up the wallet, noting its weight, the way the leather had been softened by years of use, the careful way someone had maintained it despite its obvious age. And he felt an unexpected pang of conscience as he realized this belonged to someone who cared about their possessions. Someone who probably needed every dollar inside opening the wallet to find identification so he could return it. Tom expected to see the usual contents: driver's license, credit cards, maybe some family photos, the normal detritus of someone's daily life. Instead, what he found hit him like a physical blow to his chest. A collection of items that told a story so heartbreaking and familiar that he had to sit down on the nearest bench to process what he was seeing then. Wallet belonged to Michael Rodriguez, age 34, according to his driver's license. But it was the other contents that made Tom's hands shake as he examined them. A folded piece of paper with a child's handwriting that read, "Come back to us." Daddy wrapped around a small photo of a little girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile. A business card for a substance abuse counselor with appointment times written in careful handwriting, and a laminated prayer card that had been handled so many times the edges were wearing away. There were also receipts from a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, evidence of someone living day by day, paycheck to paycheck, trying to rebuild a life that had clearly been shattered. Tom found a letter from a lawyer discussing visitation rights, another from a family court about missed child support payments, and most devastating of all, a birthday card that had never been sent. Addressed to my sweet Isabella, with a message inside that read, "Daddy loves you more than all the stars in the sky, and is working every day to become the man you deserve." As Tom sat on that bench, reading the intimate details of another man's struggle with addiction, divorce, and the desperate attempt to reconnect with his child, he saw his own story reflected back at him with uncomfortable clarity. Here was someone else who had lost everything through his own mistakes. Someone else fighting to prove he deserved a second chance. Someone else carrying the weight of a child's disappointed love like stones in his chest. Cash in the wallet totaled $43, money that was probably meant for food, gas, or another night in that cheap motel. Money that Michael Rodriguez couldn't afford to lose. Tom realized that keeping this money would be more than theft. It would be stealing from a man who was already drowning. Taking away resources from someone fighting the same battle Tom had given up on long ago, but more than the money. Tom understood that this wallet contained something infinitely more valuable: hope. Evidence of a man who hadn't given up on becoming better. Proof that redemption was possible, even when everything seemed lost. The carefully preserved photo, the appointment cards, the unsent birthday message. All of it spoke to a kind of determination that Tom had abandoned in his own life. A refusal to surrender that he both envied and feared. Tom spent the next 4 hours tracking down Michael Rodriguez, using the address on his license to discover he no longer lived there, calling the motel to learn he had checked out that morning, and finally locating him at the construction site where he worked temporary jobs. Trying to save enough money for a security deposit on an apartment that would allow him to have overnight visits with his daughter. When Tom found him, Michael was sitting alone during his lunch break, frantically searching through his pockets with the kind of panic that comes from losing. "Something irreplaceable, are you Michael Rodriguez?" Tom asked, approaching cautiously, holding out the wallet like an offering, and watching as Michael's face transformed from despair to disbelief to overwhelming gratitude. "I found this on 5th Street this morning, and I wanted to make sure you got it back," Tom continued, his voice thick with emotion as he realized he was witnessing the exact moment when someone's faith in humanity was restored. Michael opened the wallet with trembling hands, checking not for the money, but for the photo of his daughter. The appointment cards, the birthday message he had written but never sent. When he found everything intact, including the cash, tears began streaming down his weathered face as he looked up at Tom with an expression of gratitude so pure it was almost painful too. "Witness, you don't understand," Michael said, his voice breaking. "This morning I was ready to give up. To stop fighting for visitation rights, to accept that maybe my daughter was better off without me. But you returning this, you taking the time to find me, it feels like a sign that maybe I'm not as hopeless as I thought. Maybe there are still good people in this world who care about doing the right thing." Tom felt something crack open inside his chest. Some wall of cynicism and self-hatred that had been holding back 3 years of suppressed emotion. "I have a daughter too," he whispered, the words coming out before he could stop them. "And I stopped fighting for her because I convinced myself she was better off without me. But seeing your wallet, reading about your struggle, it made me realize that giving up isn't protecting her. It's just protecting me from having to face how badly I screwed up in that moment." Two broken fathers stood facing each other in a construction site parking lot, both carrying the weight of children they loved but felt unworthy of, both struggling with the question of whether redemption was possible when the damage felt irreversible. Michael's gratitude for the returned wallet became something larger, a recognition that sometimes we need to see our own story reflected in someone else's struggle too. Understand that the fight is worth continuing. 6 months later, Tom sat in a family court waiting room, his hands shaking slightly as he prepared to ask for supervised visitation rights with Emma. Following the same path that Michael had walked before him, they had stayed in touch after that day, supporting each other through therapy sessions, legal proceedings, and the slow, painful work of rebuilding trust with their children. Learning that accountability and consistency were more important than grand gestures. Michael had gotten his overnight visitation approved and was saving money for a 2-bedroom apartment where Isabella could have her own room. He had shown Tom the birthday card he finally sent, and the response he received: a drawing of 2 stick figures holding hands with "I love you, Daddy" written in crayon across the bottom. Proof that children's capacity for forgiveness often exceeds our capacity to forgive ourselves. Supervised visit with Emma had been awkward and heartbreaking, filled with careful conversations and the weight of all the missed soccer games, birthday parties, and bedtime stories that couldn't be recovered. But she had agreed to see him again, and he had learned to measure progress in small victories, her willingness to hug him goodbye. Her excitement when he remembered her favorite color had changed from pink to purple. Her tentative trust that maybe this time he would keep his promises the wallet on the sidewalk had taught. Tom, that redemption isn't a destination but a daily choice. That being a father isn't about being perfect, but about being present. And that sometimes the most important moments in our lives come disguised as random encounters with strangers who need the same thing we do. Proof that it's never too late to become the person our children deserve. This story reminded you that second chances often come in unexpected packages, and that our smallest acts of kindness can save someone who is drowning in despair. Please subscribe for more stories about the power of redemption, the strength it takes to rebuild broken relationships, and the truth that sometimes helping others is the first step toward helping ourselves. Share this with someone who might need to remember that giving up is not the same as letting go, and that love is always worth fighting for.